There is a geopolitical fissure forming just north of the U.S. border, a tectonic shift in the North American map the world is largely ignoring. After securing signatures from 10% of the voting public, independence advocates in Alberta have officially triggered a referendum. Later this year, the province will vote on whether to legally secede from Canada. This isn't a fringe movement in a poor region. Alberta is Canada's wealthiest province, home to a highly dynamic energy sector that drives the national economy. Because Canada's legal framework allows for this process, we are looking at a real-time mechanism that could permanently split the continent's second-largest country. Unlike the United States, which fought a war to establish that the union is indissoluble, Canada has a built-in legal path for provinces to leave. 2 decades ago, the Supreme Court of Canada ruled that if a province votes for independence through a clear referendum, the federal government is legally required to negotiate their departure. The driver of this movement is a deep-seated economic grievance. Alberta's population is significantly younger than the rest of the country, meaning their energy wealth is constantly flowing out to the federal government to subsidize an aging citizenry in the east. Albertans see this as a dead-end drain. They provide the capital that keeps the country solvent, but they feel they have no proportional influence over how Ottawa decides to spend those billions. On a balance sheet, this wealth makes the dream of independence look viable. The secessionists believe that if they just keep their own money, they could thrive as a sovereign power. Recently, the federal government has actively attempted to dampen this demographic tension by bringing in a large surge of migrants. By adding young workers to the aging eastern provinces, Ottawa has narrowed the productivity gap, making Alberta's financial transfers slightly less lopsided than they were a decade ago. Yet, Alberta remains the country's primary financial engine and its richest territory by a wide margin. Political momentum hits a wall when it meets the physical map. Alberta is entirely landlocked with zero ocean access. Its wealth relies on exporting oil and grain. If they leave Canada, those exports lose the right to cross Canadian soil. This is the geographic trap. The resources that make Alberta wealthy are essentially worthless if they are physically blocked from reaching the global market. There is also a hidden currency trap. Oil and grain are strictly traded in US dollars. For an independent Alberta, selling these goods would bring an uninterrupted flow of foreign hard currency into a very small, landlocked domestic market. This creates a dangerous imbalance. When a small economy is flooded with foreign cash, it drives the local currency up so high that it makes all other domestic business impossible. Local prices for food and housing would climb rapidly, creating an immediate, severe inflationary environment. Compounding this is a severe labor shortage. An independent Alberta would definitively have a very limited pool of workers, and in an inflationary world, the cost of simply maintaining their energy infrastructure would become unsustainable. The wealth secessionists want to protect would be devalued almost overnight, making it nearly impossible for the new country to survive as an isolated entity. Because the cost of total independence is so high, a post-secession Alberta would be forced into a brutal ultimatum almost immediately. The first path is to try and negotiate a free trade pact with the country they just left, but Canada would hold all the leverage. Much like the UK after Brexit, Alberta would likely find itself forced into a trade deal that is more restrictive and more expensive than being a province ever was. They would effectively become a satellite of Ottawa, subject to its rules, but without any seats in Parliament to influence them. That leaves the only other realistic choice, applying for US statehood. Economically, this would be a much softer landing. While Alberta would still be a net provider to the national budget in Washington, the gap between what they pay and what they receive would be much smaller than the current stretch under Ottawa. The decision belongs to the people of Alberta, and the political campaign leading up to the vote later this summer is going to be intense. But the final result won't just depend on politics. You can draw a new border, but you can't escape your geography. For Alberta, leaving Canada might just be the first step in joining the United States.